So this is an interesting video. I was sent this in the Discord server, and they said, "Hey Zan, found a progressive YouTuber talking about how Gen Z is the most homophobic generation." Is that true? Like, in some ways I feel like it is. Like, I feel almost like now, due to the fact that even young people are going to have some level of knowledge of social issues, that naturally there would be more homophobic kids now than there would be back then, but just by sheer numbers, and even in terms of like a proportion, just because instead of having no knowledge or opinion until you get older, you might know of it, but just because you've heard like culture war stuff. So maybe it's the true. I would like to hear that substantiated. I didn't know that was true. But they said that they want my thoughts on the video, and also that she shouted me out in a previous video. Damn. Okay, cool. That's good to hear. So apparently this creator has shouted me out in the past, and made a video that's definitely caught my eye. Damn, it got 85,000 views in 5 days. That is some good traction. That's good stuff. Nice. You love to see it. I like to see progressive content creators getting numbers, pulling big numbers. Obviously, the link to the original video will be down below in the description. We're not going to watch the whole video because it is a little bit long, but on top of that, I don't want to just yoink the entire video and basically re-upload it. I want to provide commentary and give you like a hook for you to go click the link in the description, go to the original video, and watch it there. Also, leave a comment. Like, I don't know, say Zan says thanks or something like that for the shout out, because that was very nice. That was very nice of them to do. Anyway, let's go ahead and check this out. The title is somewhat clickbaity. I'm curious to see the title qualified. You know what I mean? Because I don't know like what the rate of homophobia among Gen Z is. It feels at times that like Gen Z is either gay or homophobic. Like if you're Gen Z, you're either gay or homophobic. There's no in between. So maybe that's what's being referred to. Let's find out.
Squarespace for sponsoring this video.
That is a nice
We gotta
setup.
talk. There is something seriously wrong with our youth these days. And I don't mean that in like an alarmist kind of way, but more in a worried and concerned way. So, and I say this with a lot of love when I say that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are two.
There's definitely a little bit of fear-mongering, but it's at the point now in regards to like actual collected data where I think it's kind of inarguable that Gen Alpha in particular, late Gen Z, but particularly early Gen Alpha, is massively underperforming in like education, social skills, pretty much every metric we could measure the success and health of children. They are massively failing out in that respect. And what I'm noticing is that with Gen Z, a lot of Gen Z are like now in their 20s and extremely depressed, doomering constantly. And I feel like I'm one of the few mid-20s people right now that is not like constantly suicide posting on social media. Like borderline suicide depression posting. Like, I feel like I'm an outsider for not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's talking about how fucked it is to be Gen Z and like in your 20s. So there's that whole area. But then on top of that, you got the young people who are underscoring massively, particularly in reading. The lack of literacy among Gen Z and Gen Alpha is really scary. Like, we're talking illiterate 5th graders. That is way too old to be unable to read the back of a cereal box. And that is, by the way, the metric we're talking about here. And then, of course, you've got, like, these weird trends that are coming about due to this, like, online community. Like, a lot of these van life YouTubers are doing de-schooling or unschooling, where they're basically trying to keep their kids from getting educated and force them to only learn via... Basically, their idea is that just being on non-stop field trips, aka road trips, will teach them everything they need to know about the world, and they don't need to go to school. That is what the idea of unschooling is. And they're trying to undo the conditioning of school on their kids. In reality, it's just lazy millennial parents who want to live in a van and travel the country and still want to have kids and force them to join them and not be beholden to taking them to a school in a central place. What the fuck? There are a lot of videos about the unschooling movement on YouTube if you want to learn more about it. I'm just telling you the bit that I know, but it's part of the issue I'm sure we're about to get into.
Two of the most homophobic generations I have ever had the displeasure of witnessing. But how is that statement possible when almost 30% of Gen Z adults in America identify as queer? Let me explain. The internet was an amazing thing to happen to us as a species, arguably. It has connected us in a way we have never been connected before.
How many of you guys are familiar with the Fermi paradox? It's this idea that there exists a metaphorical great filter that prevents intelligent life from reaching interstellar, like, Star Wars level of technology and galactic space exploration and domination. The question is, if life can exist, surely it must exist fairly frequently, right? And if it does exist fairly frequently in our massive, massive universe, where is everybody? The Fermi paradox attempts to explain this by saying that there is a great filter that prevents, prevents intelligent life from getting to the point where we would ever discover it. And so in this case, I believe the great filter. Many believe the great filter is disease. Some believe it's nuclear technology. Some believe that we've already passed the great filter and we're one of the special civilizations that's passed the test, so to say. Many more think that we've yet to reach it, or that we're currently going through it. I believe we're currently going through it. My theory, what I think the great filter is the internet. Watching what's happened to humanity in the last 30 years since the internet, most notably in the last, 20 years since Web 2.0. Is it Web 2.0 or Web 3.0 when the dot-com bubble when .com blew up and everyone was using browsers, just go to websites. Was that Web 2.0 or Web 3.0? I think Web 3.0 is more recent, though. Regardless, ever since the modern internet as we know it, which has been about 20 years, the facilitation of online spaces with little to no policing has led to, back in the day, maybe a town would have a crazy guy who's really influential and gets a group of influential townspeople on board with some crazy idea, and this little town in the middle of nowhere becomes some hardcore cult town. This has happened many times before, where one influential weirdo gets a bunch of influential people bought into some insane idea, and then all of a sudden the whole town is owned by a cult, right? This has happened before. But historically, due to the nature of information having a certain limit to its reach, as far as, sound or a person's legs could carry it, because of that, there wasn't much of a wider threat to some crazy, influential, convincing idea that leads people to harmful behavior. There wasn't much grand harm to something like that. Even with TV and the radio, these things were regulated by governments pretty quickly in such a way to prevent too much damage from coming about due to the proliferation of dangerous ideas that caught on with people, despite being harmful and bad and wrong. Because there's always been cases where tons of people fall for bad, harmful, wrong ideologies, and it motivates them to do bad things. And so we've prevented this from becoming a widespread issue in the past due to the regulation of radio, internet, and obviously the fact that before these inventions, word of mouth could only travel so far. But now that we have the internet, every crazy conspiracy theory can target individuals however it needs to, with as many attempts as it needs to, in order to get them believing something insane and essentially joining a digital cult. And so I really wonder if it's the internet that is the great filter. If all species that are capable of intelligent thought develop some form of internet as we know it, it allows them to communicate between each other, and it devolves into such a shit show that it leads to extinction, pretty much. Whether it be because of climate change, nuclear war, or whatever it may be, the infighting the internet facilitates is the true great filter. That's my theory. That's what I believe personally. I think the internet is the great extinctor for humanity and all intelligent life. Because any intelligent life would invent what basically the internet, you know?
I can get a Discord DM text from my bestie in Portugal saying MILF at the top of their lungs in a matter of seconds, which is an act that would send a young Victorian child into hysteria and then abruptly die of dysentery. It's insane. It's really cool if you think about it, but as amazing as it is also somehow like the worst thing that has happened to us as a species, okay? Yes, I can use this tool to learn more about the world around me, to check my biases, to learn about new cultures and access a wealth of knowledge that was hitherto undreamt of in the days of ancient Grecian scholars. Or I can use it as a tool to confirm my already held beliefs, reassure me of my own prejudices, and block any new information that could change that. So today, I want to talk with you about how this echo chamber and the misuse of this incredible tool is happening in online queer communities, and how the younger queer generations are actively turning into homophobes before our very eyes. Because
I'm going to give a big lore background here, because I think I know what she is talking about. Actually, I don't know pronouns, because I know this is like an LGBTQ channel. Could be they, them pronouns. I don't want to, like, just assume. Regardless, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll default to they, them pronouns, as I usually do for people. But, like, the, what was I going to say? Like, I get what they're talking about here. I actually understand what they're getting at. She, her pronouns. I already watched the last, and I subbed to her channel. Cool. Okay, so she, her pronouns. Nice. Just checking. I don't know. I didn't see it anywhere in the bio or anything. Maybe it popped up on screen, though. I might not have noticed. I might have been looking at chat. Regardless, though, the point that they're getting at here is actually a good one. But I think it might be getting somewhat misinterpreted. Or not misinterpreted, but misframed. Let me give a little bit of a lore backstory here from my time online. Back in 2015, okay, cool. 2014, 15, 16, I was very involved in the political space online. Not as a content creator, but as a content consumer. And a big part of what kind of brought about Gamergate into the mainstream was the ability for it to be marketed as something that progressive left-leaning and conservative people could relate on in seeing SJWs as a problem and annoying, right? This is why Shoe on Head and full-on Nazis were seen as some of the biggest voices in the anti-SJW sphere, because it was for everyone. It was for progressive people or left-leaning people and for conservatives to dunk on the SJWs. And a big part of that branding of the anti-SJW skeptic movement, as we called it at the time, was the usage of token creators that are part of the LGBT community that love to hardcore shill gatekeeping rhetoric, particularly against, at the time, non-binary people and gender-fluid people, in order to try and say, binary trans people and just gay people, we're normal, we're the real people, but these non-binary people, they're crazy, right? So you had like Calvin Gara, Blair White, to name a couple, some of the largest figures back then, and a large part of their content was seeking out small, and I mean small, trans creators. Like, at the time, Milo Stewart, who was one of their biggest targets, a non-binary creator, had 15,000 subscribers and was getting like 10 hate videos from channels ranging from 100,000 to 1 million subs a month targeted at them. Then you had Riley J. Dennis, who was relentlessly attacked by Blair White, and by the rest of the right-wing media sphere, from Rags to Blair White. You know, you had everybody, all the chuds, and that includes the token LGBT figures. Like, so yeah. Sorry for this pause face, by the way. This is a bad frame to pause on.
So, yeah, easy, super casual discussion, not heavy at all. This is not a heavy topic at all. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is E, as in equality. I know it's a little on the nose, but like, if it works, it works. So I don't know what you want from me, okay? So this video is a little bit different from my others. If you do not know me, which you probably don't, hi, hello, I hope you're doing well. I usually talk about social or queer topics in video games, such as Genshin Impact and others. So we cook on those Genshin videos in Honkai and
Dude, I've got friends that would get along with this YouTuber so well. I've got, like, all of the girls in my friend group play Genshin Impact. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about, like, it seems like it's like Breath of the Wild, but anime? I'm not knocking it. I don't really... It's not really my cup of tea, but, like, man, a lot of my friends love Genshin Impact. Yeah, that's about it.
And other videos. I highly recommend watching if you haven't. So apologies to my subscribers for this video being a little bit more based in the real world than in our favorite piece of media. Regardless, I still hope you enjoy it because I think this is a very important conversation. And also, you know, we talk about these topics anyways, so it's not that different from my...
Wait, I got stun locked and didn't finish my point before. I feel so bad. So basically, like, yeah, back in the day, we had a lot of these anti-LGBT LGBT token figures that were hardcore pushing anti-gay, or like not even like anti-gay, it was usually gatekeepy type stuff, like this particular group that's somewhat unknown or niche to the average person is some new trendy thing, right? So a big talking point or a big pejorative they came up with was trans trender. They use this a lot for non-binary people in particular. Because believe it or not, there was a time where broadly in the trans space or the LGBT space online, non-binary was considered fake. It wasn't fake. They had no evidence for considering it as such. It's just there weren't a lot of non-binary people. Like, binary trans people outnumbered even non-binary people. So it was easy to gatekeep them for the sake of trying to appeal to, I guess, the sensibilities of cis hetero people thinking, I can understand a man becoming a woman or a woman becoming a man, but are a man or a woman becoming a they them? That's too far, buddy. Trying to appease that type of person, I guess, as if their standards won't just continue to move, which they have, of course, as we now know. But yeah, this is the true scum versus too cute war, as they might say. But this led to like an entire batch of like young LGBT people who grew up during that time, basically copy pasting their politics from Blair White and Calvin Garra. And then after about 2 to 4 years at the most, realizing how cringe it is with a little bit of age and just general experience as a LGBT person. And then they grow out of it and look back at their phase as a Blair White fan as like the most cringe time of their life. That is an extremely common experience, like that many of you might have gone through, in fact, if you're trans in chat or LGBT in chat. And that was very common for a lot of people who were teenagers during that era and were LGBT. But nowadays, I don't even know what the modern standard is, like what the like current equivalent would be. Probably still Blair White. But I think that's what this video is getting at, that same trend. And I think on the bright side, silver lining, a lot of these young people that are part of the LGBT community and falling for this stuff are going to grow out of it.
Content. Okay, let's go. Adventurer, I have a quest for you. But heed my words, this quest is not for the faint of heart or for betas. But if you deem yourself brave enough, then you must slay the fierce dragon in the dark, decrepit, cursed, slightly smelly forest. But in order to do that, you must build a website from scratch.
Fuck.
I know,
I can't do
Adventurer,
that.
It's perilous.
I can't do that. I'm sorry. Listen, guys. Like, what's my IQ? Like 97? I can't build a fucking website. No shot. No fucking shot. No shot. I hired people to do that. No, but really, you should watch the sponsorship. If you need a website, Squarespace, and EIS social code for 10% off. Don't use Honey, because then it will not use that promo code. It'll replace it with something else. Oh, nerd emoji. My favorite emoji. All right. Back to it.
Before I have people in my comments hitting me with the, actually emojis, I want to get it clear. No, I do not personally believe that Gen Z is the most homophobic generation, as the title may suggest. I fear generations
clickbait! No. In all seriousness, progressives need to get more comfortable using clickbait. The right literally just blatantly lies constantly in all of their material. I think it's fair if we progressives start, just engaging a little bit more clickbait, I respect it. I respect it.
past have been a lot more violent to queer people than some 16-year-old on Twitter with a lot of opinions and a genZ profile picture. The title is a hyperbolic statement. It is. But unfortunately, YouTube's algorithm prefers statements such as those, so deepest apologies for tricking you. But that being said, I still believe Gen Z's and Gen Alpha's internet activity has made them more homophobic than not. Let me prove it to you. So, we're gonna do a little exercise, little interactive moment here. I know it's gonna be fun. I'm going to read off a few terms in labels to you, and I want you to hear them and tell me how these terms make you feel. All right? Are we ready? Trans mask lesbian, transsexual, aro ace pansexual, and bisexual lesbian. How we feeling? I've just shot 4 terms at you.
Man. Dog, man. I remember back in the day, dude, this shit was so fucking cringe that there was these Twitter, like, LGBT community Twitter debates every month over what group shouldn't be considered valid. And I always got shit for being a cishet straight guy that would come into these, like, LGBT arguments and just be like, why are you gatekeeping people that say that's their identity? Let's say it is something they made up and they are just kind of misled or following some kind of trend. They're clearly not cis or straight, and if they are, let them figure that out. Why are you, like, outwardly, like, engaging in the same behavior that you know hurts you on those grounds of like, and they'll always have some justification for it. They'll say, oh, well, they're faking what I go through, and they'll try to make it about them and about how, like, they're doing something woke by being a gatekeeper. But this shit was just so, I just found it so cringe. Particularly, like, he, him lesbian was one of them. There was this like, drama over the concept of he, him lesbians. Don't even know what that is. But my response to it was like, why do you care? Like, if you are a trans person on the left, genuinely, what excuse do you have to give a fuck if someone identifies as a he, him lesbian and that's not real? Assuming it's not. Let's assume it's not for the sake of argument. Why do you care? Like, you as a trans or gay person should know that, like, anybody who is obsessing over the identity of some other person just doing their own thing is a fucking weirdo. Why are you doing it too? And I called that out, and they would get mad at me and say, you have no place in this conversation. You're cis and straight. And I'm just glad that part of the left is really just voiceless now, honestly. So that, like, we don't have these dumb gatekeeper arguments as much anymore. Maybe they're all happening on, like, Tumblr or something, and I'm just not seeing it. But this was a big problem for a while.
Terms that are labels some queer people identify as today. Some of you may be shaking your head going, those are contradictory. They don't make any sense. Or some are rewinding, trying to figure out what I just said. Others might be irritated because those are made up labels. Or maybe some of you guys are just sitting on the couch eating hot Cheetos, not giving a shit. Shout out to you. If you were to go on
the correct take. No, in all seriousness, like, the correct answer is, if you don't know what any of these things are, ask someone who identifies as it what it means to them. That's, like, generally, that's what I do. Like, if somebody, like, in the replies of the he, him lesbians drama, like, when I quote tweeted the people that were saying they're not valid, people who identified that way were in the replies explaining it to me, because I indicated I didn't understand it, but I wasn't, like, I don't see any reason to obsess or call it out or try to devalidate it. And even though I indicated I didn't understand it, people who identified that way were, like, thankful of my understanding, like, mindset and explained what it meant to them. And it made sense. It made sense the way they explained it. And if somebody can explain the way they identify and it makes sense, and remember, identity is an emotional thing. There's no, like, fact-based argument here, but if they explain it and it makes sense to how they identify and how they feel and what makes them feel comfortable, then I don't see any reason to try and poke holes in it. You know what I mean?
Online today and identify as any of these things, not only would you have conservative homophobes telling you that you're making stuff up and you're just one of those confused queers, but you will also find members of the queer community echoing the same sentiments. So we ask ourselves, are these labels inherently anti-queer? Do contradictory labels such as these invalidate other real queer identities? Is it harmful to identify as these things? So to start answering these questions, and to give us an easier way to slide into this discussion, I am going to give you 3 anecdotal events that I have either witnessed online or actively participated in. And then I'm going to give you a few
Nice.
seconds to ponder and then get back to me. So, moment number 1. A simple TikTok is the stage of our first event, as is where these events usually spring from, unfortunately. A TikTok from a while ago was posted of someone filming their lesbian flag on their wall with the text over it reading, "Y'all, I like a boy. Do I have to take it down?" Crying face emoji. Naturally, a calm discussion over the process of questioning one.
Oh no. Listen. We got any bisexual women in chat? Any bisexual women in chat? Raise your hand. You can all confirm it can sometimes be a little tough to get into a relationship with a lesbian or to go to like a lesbian bar or whatever it may be if you're bi. Because a lot of the time, there is some level of cultural... if you're bi. Same goes for gay men and bi men. Not to the same extent, but there is a fair amount of, like, pick a side. It's a very common basically the mindset within the gay community, the biphobia mindset, is pick a side, is essentially, like, the idea behind it. And I know that, like, there's more of that within the lesbian community, and bisexual women can sometimes be a bit ostracized and, like, not quite, just almost put down to a degree, ignored, or even given dirty looks, etc. I've heard stories that include all those examples. I've heard of that. That's a thing, apparently. Also, straight girls towards bi guys a lot. Yep. But I was more so referring within the LGBT community, like the biphobia is real.
One's own sexuality and the fluidity of said sexuality did not occur. A lot of comments and discourse surrounding the TikTok pointed in the direction of advising this person to take down the flag and also arguing that this person must identify as bisexual from now on because lesbians don't like men, point blank, period. There is no other way around it. Event number 2. An amazing artist.
I mean, like... You have to take the lesbian flag down. Really? Really? Like, why not have a bi and lesbian flag? Because, like, no one says, if two women are dating, no one says they're in a bisexual relationship. No one says that. Even if both women are bisexual, no one says it's a bisexual relationship when two women are dating. They say it's a lesbian relationship. So, like, in the same way that a bi man is gay, a bi woman is also still lesbian. Sometimes. Like, my point, actually, is that these standards and definitions and labels were literally invented for people to use to make themselves feel, not necessarily seen, but to feel understood. Right? Like, there have been gay people for I don't know, millions of years. Anatomically, modern humans have existed for 200,000 years. There have been gay humans for at least 200,000 years. Guarantee it. At least 200,000 years. And so, the idea that, like, or is it 2 million? I don't know. I know that, like, no, I'm pretty sure it's right. Like, anatomically, modern humans came about, like, 200,000 years ago? Or is that how long we've been, like, doing agriculture? I don't remember. I might have mixed up two numbers. Regardless, that whole time, at the very least, there have been gay people. Okay? It's 300,000? My bad. There have been gay people. And long before there was words to describe being gay or any of these gender identities, there were gay and trans people. They always existed. And these people probably felt a lot of different ways about themselves, probably had a lot of internal conflict. We know that, like, some of the greatest artists of all of history were, like, tortured, internally and externally tortured gays, okay? Like, they've had massive influence on our culture. And so, knowing this, in modern day, we've come up with so many words to describe the feelings that LGBT people have, the ways to describe themselves and give things that they've felt a label so that they can put it into words so it's not just indescribable feelings and vibes. that these definitions, these words, and these labels are not perfect. They aren't perfect, you know? They're definitely contradictions. There are ways in which they're not 100% applicable to how we understand these issues today, and that's fine. The point of them is for individuals to feel like they understand and can express themselves better. So harping on others for the way they identify when you already yourself are part of a group that gets harped on for how you identify, it's like, how much more hypocritical, frankly, can you be? You know what I mean?
By the name of Pyro_Cry on Twitter is making gorgeous art of the characters from the Fear and Hunger franchise. Note, listener, if you're under 18,
Cool.
you're not allowed to look this game up, okay? You will be traumatized. Don't play with me. I don't play, okay? I personally love their art. But one day, they
I don't know
posted
what Fear and Hunger
gorgeous
is.
artwork of Marina from Termina, the second game. So the only thing you need to know about this art and this game is that Marina is a trans woman, canonically, in the game. She rocks, okay? Love Marina. I love her! Curiously, however, the artist drew her in a more traditionally masculine frame, air quotes, and was thus called a transphobe for invalidating Marina's identity and, quote, de-transing her. This post got 2 million views, which is not a common occurrence on this artist's page, so as you could tell, it caused quite the conversation.
Really? This shit's still happening in 2023? I guess that's still fair. Yeah, we're in 2025 now. I feel like ever since Elon took over Twitter, slowly but surely, as like the left has lost its ability to exist on Twitter without being like heavily deboosted. I thought that a lot of this like pointless like cancellation drama had like fizzled away.
2 million views, which is not a common occurrence on this artist's page, so as you could tell, it caused quite the conversation. Event number 3. I stream on Twitch. Hey guys, same username, new social. And I try to provide a very queer-friendly, joyful place in the little community we've made. One night, we were talking about queerness, and as my
Nice.
viewers often do, one viewer shared a little bit about herself and her identity. She stated that she identifies as a bisexual lesbian, and that she had to go through quite the amount of ridicule while she figured this label out for herself. A person in my chat got mad at
There
her,
you go.
told her that she was invalidating real lesbians.
There you go, right there. Holy fuck. In real time, not only the best way to get these labels explained to you is by someone that identifies that way to explain to you like what it means to them. And then of course immediately the just out of nowhere like I need to invalidate this person's identity. If I invalidate their identity, then it'll make I'll feel more valid. Like why? It's so cringe. Like literally this example. I've seen this happen a million times.
While she figured this label out for herself. A person in my chat got mad at her, told her that she was invalidating real lesbians and that her identity was harmful. Okay, so those are the 3 events that we will be discussing today and using those as like branch off points into like deeper discussions. Okay. So after saying those events, I'm going to give you a few moments. Now's the time. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to ponder. I want you to let all these moments sink into your skin. And I want you to ask yourself, what do all of these events have in common? Again, another interaction moment. So fun. Love these. I'm going to chill here for a second so you can pause and think. I want you to think. For real. It's a one-word
is
answer,
that like
so
a thing
I'll
those
give you a
do?
second. And really
Oh,
think.
neat.
Don't jump to your first gut feeling. Okay, you got it?
That's
Awesome.
neat.
So what do all of these scenarios have in common? The correct answer is intolerance. Intolerance for a queer person to live or be depicted as anything other than the image of the socially acceptable normal queer. Intolerance, ignorance, and prejudice. Or even more answers if you're so inclined. Now, why? The culture online in many Gen Z and Gen Alpha liberal spaces is a pretty queer-friendly one. Be who you are for your pride. We celebrate Pride Month. We love queer representation in popular media, and we love queer people. Except when those queer people are a little too queer. We throw our hands and marry. When we see RuPaul's Drag Race and all the slay mamas, yes gods, the boots, drag queens turning looks. But the moment when one of those drag queens is a trans man dressing as a woman, we stop and we pause. The moment we meet some
I wouldn't say that's necessarily maybe. I don't really follow drag race culture, so actually her commentary would be better to pull from than mine. But what I'll say I've noticed is this tendency to like have double standards that people don't even realize they have, right? Like I want to start getting these like little gamer chuds on for like debates about like whether or not minorities in games is like DEI or whatever. And I want to confront them with like, why is it never shoehorned or dishonest when a straight white character is the main character? Why is that the default? Why is that the default? Why is it that when a straight white character is the protagonist, that raises no alarm bells, that's the default, that's good, but there needs to be, like, it is bad if the character is black or gay or a woman, and there's some extra modifier? Why does that raise alarm bells and not straight white guy? Like, why is that the okay default? And just kind of, like, have them explain that. Because a lot of people don't realize that's their bias, right? That, like, it's woke and garbage if a game is bad and the protagonist is a minority. Like, there's a double standard there. They'll be willing to look past certain things if they don't feel there's a political attack against them. But why do they feel that political attack? Where's that bias coming from? You have to question them about it. And I feel like for a lot of these LGBT people as well, that like gatekeep, I want to question them about where this like bias comes from, because my guess is that for them, they are trying, some of them are trying to ostracize those within the LGBT movement that they think will push away normies that don't understand complex gender issues. Maybe that's what they're doing for a lot of them, but I think many of them actually do see, say, a bisexual lesbian as invalidating, because a lot of the LGBT community online is extremely attached to their understanding of the community, their level of wokeness. Like, in progressive communities, especially LGBT ones, out-woking each other is a very good way to gain some level of social status and approval. And I say woke in the literal sense, like literally being more progressive than each other and like virtue signaling harder than each other gets you more whatever clout exists within these progressive like Tumblr spaces. And so I think that for a lot of them, the idea that things will change and what they're comfortable with no longer being what's considered like the top most progressive thing to believe or support scares them. And the idea of having to get behind like he, him lesbians or whatever, it's like that weirds them out. That's something new and unfamiliar to them. And they're having the same feeling that a lot of like homophobic people have towards them. And they don't even realize it because they've existed in a space where they have gone out of their way to be as progressive and to virtue signal as hard as possible. So now when they're being ignorant, they're trying to come off as progressive as they do it. So they frame it as, you're invalidating my identity by having an identity I want to invalidate.
Someone who casually mentions that they are a non-binary bisexual lesbian, we pause, and then we get angry. That's not a valid label. We say, actually, you're invalidating actual lesbians by saying that. And we yell, we moan, we bitch, and we groan, and the end result is a result we have been experiencing and witnessing for centuries, which is a queer person being demeaned and invalidated. But this time, this result is coming from our own very community. The act of label policing, or the act of enforcing a strict code of conduct or strict terminology over the correct way to be queer, is not something the present generations have like
Damn, we got a term for this now. Before I just called it gatekeeping.
Invented. You know, we have had infighting in the queer community forever. LOL. Asexuals or aromantics were not accepted in the queer community because their lack of sexual or romantic attraction just like didn't fit what it means to be queer. Biphobia is still super rampant in the queer communities because of the view that bisexuals can choose to be oppressed or not whenever they feel like it, or that they're just indecisive or greedy or confused. Trans people were and still are an ever contentious topic for some reason, and that's just naming a few. So seeing queer people label police other queers is not new, but it hurts a part of me when I see so many young people on the internet who, in most cases due to their age, have never visited a Pride event in person, pick up some pseudo-intellectual argument that was like popping off on Twitter and then just took it as law. A lot of the internet discourse around queerness won't stand in like real-life queer spaces, so it's just something a lot of the younger generation just doesn't understand. Like, if you told a bisexual lesbian she can't do that in real life, you're gonna get like punched, you know? Like, you're gonna get punched. So naively.
I think it's more so that like the average Gen Z queer person would never say something confrontational to another person in real life face to face. Like, let's be real. Let's be real. Come on. Can't even say hello to the cashier at the store half the time. And I know that because I have, that's you guys. It's a lot of you guys in chat. Oh my God. Oh wait, no, I'm not going to stun lock right now. But no, I honestly think that a lot of this is just young, very politically underdeveloped people falling into the largest LGBT creators out there who all happen to be conservative pick-me's, because there's more money and prominence on the right no matter what target demographic you have. And so we're just seeing the Blair Whites of the world reaching trans people first, young trans people, young gay people, young queer people just in general first, indoctrinating them, but most of them seem to grow out of it. Like, we're basically talking about the LGBT like community's batch of like shithead little kids that make the internet and the political space worse. We gamers have our own little batch we unleash every few years of little shithead teenage underdeveloped politically gamers that come in to start spamming slurs and talking about how games are going woke. That's just the LGBT community's version of that. People have underdeveloped politics when they're young, and it leads them to some cringe stuff, but it's worth calling out.
And with peace and love, I hope that this video will act as a way to challenge some of these rising sentiments that are unfortunately becoming normalized. Take the first event, for example. The original TikTok of the person asking if they should take down their lesbian flag since they have a crush on a boy was screenshotted and reposted on Twitter with the poster commenting ... But that isn't all that they said. This poster in their replies then joyously asked other lesbians to follow them and added on, quote, "All you bi lesbians in my replies still aren't valid, by the way. Let's take one step outside, shall we?" In which another Twitter user in response said, quote, "They'll try to gaslight you into thinking it's valid, but you're right."
It really is wild how, like, just the worst people flourish on Twitter under Elon. They always did flourish on Twitter, but, like, there was some level of, like, if you were just unhinged enough, people wouldn't really follow you and you wouldn't get any traction. But now it's like, these are the top posts and everything. Like, the meanest, most hateful thing is always the top liked post. Even within, like, the LGBT community spaces, it's all, like, literally gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss type queer people on Twitter now. That's it. Just the clout-hungry, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss types.
With a picture of a woman holding a sign that says, "I hate a fake gay." The original poster valiantly said in response, "I will not be silenced." This situation also reflects what happened in my chat that fateful night, with one of my viewers identifying as a bisexual lesbian and then being ridiculed for it immediately. Afterwards, I talked to the person who was mad at the bi-lesbian and I asked why they were mad. And this person claimed that bi-lesbianism is erasure and invalidation of real lesbians and thus waters down real lesbians' legitimacy. Paraphrase.
This is a really good example, by the way, of, like, inter-community progressive clout chasing, like, very clearly, like, trying hard to turn this into something progressive. Like, also a very clear sign that, like, they are very immersed in their bubble. If, as our country, assuming they're American, as the world's most powerful country, actively devolves back to the politics of at least the 1950s, maybe even further back, gay and trans people are about to lose their rights on a level we never thought of before, and they're arguing about how someone identifying as a bisexual lesbian is erasing their identity. And it's like, do you not know what is happening right now? Throughout the whole Western world, politically, to gay and trans people, from Britain to America, what is happening right now? Because there is so much worse to be worrying and talking about. And if bisexual lesbians are your biggest concern as a gay person, you have it good, bro. You have it good. Like, your main concern, if that is what you're upset about, your main concern in life is not your rights. It's your interpersonal Twitter queer space like clout, okay? Like, that's all that they care about. That's all that affects them. Like, I don't know how these, like, Twitter posters are posting about this kind of shit when what is happening in politics is happening right now. It's mind-blowing to me.
Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Now, personally, I felt sick to my stomach reading those tweets about that TikTok and about bi-lesbians, and also sick remembering what went down in the chat all those months ago and why I didn't stop it fast enough or why I didn't know what I was talking about. There's something so sickening, and in a bad way, not in a sickening good way, about a queer person putting down another under the guise of righteousness, as if the unconventionally labeled queer is actively hurting someone by identifying the way they do. Spoiler alert for the whole video, they aren't. So when I first heard the term bisexual lesbian, lesbian, for example. I'm going to admit right here, right now, in this video, that my first response was, well, that's a little silly. But before commenting or opening my big fat mouth, I had to do research because, hey, I don't know everything. In fact, I know very little. I know pretty much nothing. And I wanted to research before I said anything hateful. I mean, where I was coming from was bisexual means someone who is attracted to two genders, right? And a lesbian is like a woman who's only attracted to other women, right? So you can't mix the two. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But then I look up the definition of bisexual, and stonewall.org says, quote, bi is an umbrella term used to describe a romantic and or sexual orientation towards more than one gender. Okay, makes perfect sense. But then we get to lesbian, and it says, refers to a woman who has a romantic and or sexual orientation towards...
I'm gonna assume bi-lesbian means bisexual with a strong preference for women, right? That's just my guess.
Women. Some non-binary people may also identify with this term. Curious. If you noticed, it didn't say women who only have an attraction to other women. So let's keep researching. The TrevorProject.org says lesbian is a noun that describes women who are predominantly attracted to other women. Huh? Predominantly? What? But Google defines lesbian as a woman exclusively attracted to women. I'm so confused. Oh my god. I am so confused about what the heck.
None of these definitions or words were written in stone by God. Humans invented them for the sake of their linguistic usefulness, because words are just tools that we use to communicate, and so they're not perfect, and sometimes we have to change those tools, modify them, get new tools, and that's just a case we're experiencing that issue right now, where our development of words to describe people's identity has not been thoroughly fleshed out yet. And so at points like this, we're finding that certain definitions do not agree with each other from certain sources because others are adapting the definitions of certain terms in order to fit what we currently understand, while others are still sticking with like the rigid definition that's been more commonly used for, you know, like 20 years or whatever. These are all social like God did not like inscribe within a stone the word lesbian and its definition. We made up the word, we made up its definition, we choose how to use it, and if its usefulness is more derived out of a different usage, then we ought to use it differently, and that seems to be what Stonewall suggests.
Hell is going on, okay? Why is this definition so different? Okay, well, calm down, Jesus. Words have meaning, and they also have history. So here's some history real fast. This is my favorite part of the video. Yeah. Okay, I'm taking these off for the history part because it's getting serious. Also because it's so hot in here, so I'm sorry. So, back in the day, when being queer, no matter how you identified, was outright villainized, lesbians and bisexual women were actually the same communities. Bisexual women were viewed as a type of lesbian, since at the time, lesbianism was mostly seen as a woman being attracted to other women, though not exclusively. We see evidence of this in the 1955 book, We Walk Alone, saying, quote, another source of lesbian is the so-called bisexual. The bisexual lesbian is indeed often love-hungry. Unlike many homosexuals who simply talk bisexuality, this lesbian lives it and dies countless times in the process, end quote. It wasn't until the 1970s when the terms lesbian and bisexual were made to be distinct from each other. Now, why is this? One of the reasons is due to the Furies, who were a collective of women who advocated for feminism in the 1970s in America, and wrote about their ideologies and viewpoints about patriarchy, lesbianism, and feminism in their own newspaper by the same name, which was groundbreaking in their time. They proposed the lesbian feminist separatism, which was advocating for women to completely separate themselves from...
That's actually really funny, right? Because isn't lesbian derived from a Greek word, and the Furies are from Greek myth? That's heat. That's good wordplay.
Men, and in doing so take away the power that men often hold over women. They encourage lesbianism as a form of complete autonomy from men, saying, quote, lesbianism is not a matter of sexual preference, but rather one of political choice, which every woman must make if she is to become woman-identified and thereby end male supremacy, end quote.
So this is political lesbianism. Once again, a lot of different terms that go way beyond what the average, even queer person might even know of. Political lesbianism, which I think that to a degree, the bounds of your sexual interest are somewhat like inherent to you. Maybe not, I don't know if it's like how you're born, I don't know if it's developed. I actually don't know if like we even know, like if we've ever figured that out. I don't think you could ever figure it out ethically through research. But regardless, like I can't make myself be bi, for instance, right? I don't know if it was conditioned in me from a young age that I can't be attracted to dudes, but I just can't be. I can't make that happen. But people who are bisexual feel some level of attraction to people, more like regardless of what gender they are. They don't just feel attraction for women if they're a guy. They feel at least some attraction for men as well if they're bisexual. And that feeling of attraction is something that I think is inherent, or not inherent, but like it is core to someone, that they feel it in their heart, so to say. And so political lesbianism, I don't really think is real in the sense that I think those that choose to be politically lesbian, that is to say, if you don't know what that means, like literally not dating men and only being in relationships with women as a form of protest against patriarchy, like, you have to have been a little gay already to be like, yes, I will date only women as a form of protest. Like, I would not be up to date men as a form of protest, to be clear. Like, most incels wouldn't be up to date men as a form of protest against, like, women even, right? Like, that, like if they were, you'd be like, okay, so they were already gay. This is just like an excuse. This just sounds like bi women that are sick of men's bullshit. Yeah, and it's still a thing today, by the way. This is still a movement that exists today, the political lesbian movement.
They said that they did want to, but they questioned the act of bisexuality, stating that women who are bisexual are still in men's control and undermine the feminist struggle. Quote, women who practice bisexuality today are simply leading highly privileged lives that do not challenge male power, and that, in fact, undermine the feminist struggle. These ideals about the distinction between the...
I love how, like, maybe I'm wrong, I'm not in this community, so I can't, but from the outside looking in, it feels like gay dudes and bi dudes, for the most part, don't engage in this drama and gatekeeping as much, and they're just out fucking and getting fucked and having a good time, partying, vibing, you know, just enjoying being gay. Meanwhile, you've got, like, lesbian and bi-lesbian communities that are, like, constantly infighting over, like, who's valid and who's not. Like, who gets to be considered a lesbian, who gets to be considered queer. Like saying, yes, if you ever even so much as look up at a man, then you are betraying the sisterhood. And it's like, it's so, like, you get these crazy radical hate-based sects within, like, women in the queer community. I don't see that really with gay dudes and bisexual dudes. I just find that funny.
The power of lesbianism and sort of like the weakness of bisexuality seem to be one of the turning points in casting bisexual women out of the lesbian community and out of the lesbian definition. There were a lot of queer rights movements happening at this time, so I can't say the Furies were directly the only cause of this separation, but their ideas definitely aided in this distinction between bisexual women and lesbians.
Cringe.
This observation is, of course, American-centric, so apologies, I can only speak of the history of my own country, but it is important history to keep in mind for this discussion. It is important to realize that the term lesbian was never concrete or rigidly defined or followed. As we see, this continues today with the difference in definitions all over the internet. It wasn't until relatively recently that socially we started to view these definitions to be concrete and strict, and that any deviation from these definitions would be a literal threat on lesbianism or on bisexuality or any other definition. So I think
it's
a lot of people,
thing.
Me included, that didn't know this history of the terms, or didn't know that the terms aren't super concrete, may view lesbianism as the Google Oxford definition. Quote, denoting or relating to women who are sexually or romantically attracted exclusively to other women. So I ask, if we are to enforce the true lesbian definition, which means casting out anyone who isn't a woman, who only loves women, so no bi-lesbians at all, then I fear we will get stuck in the trenches a little bit. It gets slippery when you start questioning what is legitimate and what isn't. And the slippery slope leaves people to ask, what do you mean by woman? Does that woman definition include trans women? A lot of radical feminists would disagree. If a femme presenting a non-binary person goes by lesbian, does that mean they're invalid too? Well, they aren't a woman after all, they don't identify as that. So they shouldn't be allowed then, right? So then all the non-binary lesbians are just making shit up then, right? Well, if we let non-binary people identify as lesbians, then we would be picking and choosing which part of the Stonewall definition we agree with. What about an aromantic lesbian? How would that work? Is a bisexual lesbian as valid as an asexual one? Some say no to everything, and that all of these identities are water.
That's, you know what? Validity Olympics. That's what I'm going to call it. The idea that, like, so much of these progressive queer spaces are about, like, validating each other. Like, you're ooh woo, you're so heckin' valid. You're so heckin' valid, sweetie. That the idea of taking away the validity of someone's identity is like one of the worst, meanest, cruelest things you can do to another person. And so that's the main route of attack. And it's so personal to someone that it's like, no, don't do that. Like, that's so trashy to like try and go after someone's identity, especially if you're queer. You've had your identity attacked at some point for sure. You should know how not fun that is, right? Anyway, I don't want to play more of the video because we are at the halfway point, and I do not want to yoink the entire video and just re-upload it. I want to encourage you guys to go click on the original video's link and go watch it yourselves and go send support over in the forms of likes, comments, and subscriptions. In fact, I still need to subscribe. There we go. Went ahead and dropped the sub and dropped my like. I'll go ahead and drop a link to the original video in both my live stream chats right now, for anyone who wants to go right now and go check out the video. But in the meantime, when this goes out on YouTube, there'll be a link down below in the description to the original as well, if it so interests you. I want to say thank you to E for the great video. I very much liked it as a basis for my commentary. Massive shout out, of course, and I hope you're okay with me watching your video on stream. Let me know if you want, like, I don't know, revenue sharing or something. Feel free to claim it. Please don't copyright strike me, but feel free to claim the revenue. I don't mind. But yeah, with that said, if you guys enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, enjoyable, or in any way worth supporting, then consider dropping a like and a comment and a thumbs up and a subscription. It really does help a lot. It really means a ton. Thank you to everybody who goes out of their way to support the channel. Every single thumbs up and comment in real time boosts my streams and videos in the algorithm, getting all my stuff out to more people, so I really do appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't already and you want to see more from me on other platforms, be sure to follow my social medias linked down below in the description. And on top of that, make sure if you want to support me directly and help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buy some Xander Hall merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless of how you support me, though, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again, and I hope you have a good one.